On the eastern expanse of the World's Edge Mountains lies a bleak and barren land of darkness filled with marauding tribes of orcs, goblins, and worse, known simply as the Darklands. Stretched throughout several leagues in a crest of magma is a horrific realm of cruel torture and wicked malice, the Plain of Zharr. It is here where the corrupted counterparts of the Dwarf Empire, known as Chaos Dwarves, use their knowledge of science, engineering, and wicked sorcery to serve their chaotic deity, Hashut, Father of Darkness, through unspeakable acts, heinous sacrificial rituals, and callous evils. The Sons of Hashut. The Chaos Dwarves are evil, self-centered creatures caring nothing for the life of others, and directing all of their labors to the construction of their great city, the Tower of Zharr-Naggrund. Chaos Dwarf armies scour the Darklands and beyond for slaves to fill their city and labor beneath the earth in the pits that surround it. Chaos armor, magic weapons, and terrible war machines funnel from the Darklands into the hands of the eager Chaos warriors. Meanwhile, the forges of the Chaos Dwarves shroud the land in thick, noxious smoke lit by the flames of the cauldrons. The ringing of the hammers, muted only by the shrieks of fear and pain of those condemned by such a malign fate. The whole of the structure tremors with the never-ceasing labors, and echoes with the screams of slaves dropped into cauldrons filled with molten iron, offered as sacrifices to appease their hungry god. Malign, dark-souled, and merciless, the Zharr, or Chaos Dwarves, as they are known in legend to the other peoples of the world, are a warrior race of demon-smiths and craftsmen, slavers and brutal killers, who dominate the northern reaches of the Darklands and have done for thousands of years. Long separated from their fating kin of the West, the Chaos Dwarves have given themselves over to their Dark Master, and Chaos has worked subtle changes on their bodies, slowly mutating even the notoriously resilient Dwarven physiology, inflicting twisted terrors on their minds and souls so that they have become a spite-filled and calculating, cruel reflection of what they once were. The most extreme examples changes can be found among the sorcerer prophets and demon-smiths who rule them, who must pay a heavy price for the power they gained from their dark god, and the grotesque and murderously bestial bull centaurs, mutated beyond almost all recognition and unmatched in savagery. Altered by the very essence of chaos, Chaos Dwarves are easily distinguished from other dwarves by the curse chaos has laid upon them. Their long dwarven beards are as black as void, and their entire demeanor emanates with cruelty and dread. Chaos Dwarves often possess protruding tusks that lend them a brutal, savage expression, and they are commonly gray-fleshed and red of eye. Apart from this, they display a few of the mutations that Chaos brings. Some develop bull-like features, even cloven hooves, and occasionally horns. Although such extreme mutations are rare amongst ordinary Chaos Dwarves, and common only amongst sorcerers and those that have the most direct contact with the stuff of chaos. To the dwarves of the World's Edge Mountains, the very existence of Chaos Dwarves is blasphemy and abomination indeed. Dwarves refuse to admit or recognize that their evil kindred even exist. Despite such wrenching differences, Chaos Dwarves share many of the same qualities as other dwarves, being as stout, determined, and unyielding as their cousins in battle. Chaos Dwarves are elite warriors often clad in ornate chaos armor and wielding double-handed axes with unparalleled precision. Many Chaos Dwarves of the Darklands wear large, elaborate helms that represent their status in society as well as for added protection in warfare. The Chaos Dwarves are governed by a council of elder sorcerers or high priests, drawing on their ancient wisdom and gifted with the sorcery of their dark god, Hashut. The sorcerers rule their nation with an iron fist. Agonizing walls of terror shroud the land from insufferable acts of horror, as the Dark Masters of the Chaos Dwarfs perform acts of wanton blasphemy in the name of their foul god. The Chaos Dwarves respect age and knowledge like the Old World Dwarfs, but they do so when these attributes are coupled with power and evidence of Hashut's blessings. The latter takes the form of mutations involving horns and hooves. The Chaos Dwarves are few in number, and thus uninterested in expanding their diabolical empire. They only wish to secure their own realm and prosperity by enslaving the lesser races. Hundreds of thousands of goblinoid slaves labor in their hateful workshops and cities of the Chaos Dwarves, erecting monoliths and temples to their chaotic masters, as well as extracting fuel and resources needed for the wrought of weapons, armor, and potent machines of destruction. Thousands of these thralls perish on a daily basis due to overexhaustion and horrific working conditions. As a result, the Chaos Dwarves conduct several expeditions throughout the Dark Lands and the Old World, seeking fresh slaves to carry out the dark wishes of Hashut. Chaos Dwarves have a special contempt for the Old World Dwarfs. It is these Western traitors and their ancestor gods who abandon the Chaos Dwarves to their fate. The savagery of these two races when they meet in combat matches that of any Old World Dwarf-Orc conflict. Still, the Old World Dwarves have value to their corrupted kin as high-quality and hard-working slaves. The god of the Chaos Dwarves is Hashut, the father of darkness, a grim and malignant being, often represented as a great blazing bull wreathed in smoke and shadow. Hashut is a chaos god, although some scholars of the arcane would label him as an archdemon rather than a dark god, while others insist it is some other form of entity let loose upon the world during the time of chaos. Hashut is closely associated with tyranny, greed, fire, and hatred, and it is a being whose gift of power comes at a terrible price. As with much of their origins, just how the dwarfs of the East came to seal their pact with Hashut remain shrouded in the dark times of the great sundering of the world by chaos. And in truth, the Chaos Dwarves themselves may have only a dim and warped understanding of how they became bound up with their nightmarish god. The twisted runic cartouches that adorn their fire temples do, however, speak of the abandonment of the dwarves of Zharr-Naggrund by their ancestor gods during the Great Cataclysm. Their finding of salvation and succor with their new god and the thirst of Hashut for sacrifice and subjugation in return for his patronage. Over the centuries, in return for flesh and blood, homage and devotion, Hashut has gifted the Chaos Dwarves with malign secrets and powerful sorcery that find with their mastery of industry and forgecraft to create many demon-fused machineries and monstrous engines of wan dominion over the fires of the earth and arcane malevolent lore that has brutalized their sanity and soul. The pact between the Chaos Dwarves and their Dark God has only deepened over time and grown to the point where the tendrils of Hashut's malevolence and the Chaos Dwarves' own bitter souls have become one. The center of their power is Zharr-Naggrund, the city of fire and desolation. It is a place of unimaginable suffering for the countless slaves of other races that they use to feed the turning of their ceaseless industry and to appease the appetites of their nightmarish god, Hashut, the father of darkness. Their empire has come to encompass the vast fire-scorched volcanic plain of Zharr-Naggrund, at the heart of which Zharr-Naggrund sits, and delves deep below, the surface taking in countless miles of cavernous, magma-lit delvings, ornate chambers, and hellish mine works. For many miles around it, the plain Zharr has succumbed to the hand of the Chaos Dwarves, and it is littered with the scars of vast open mines. Fiery rivers of lava, ash dunes, and stagnant pools of foaming yellow and blood-red alchemical spoil worse than the foulest natural poison. Far from dying away, the Chaos Dwarf Empire is slowly and steadily expanding its influence, and maintains several major outposts and fortified citadels in the southern Darklands, most notably the Tower of Gorgoth and the Black Fortress, although none could truly claim dominion over the shifting, desolate landscape of the Darklands, nor its monstrous inhabitants. The Chaos Dwarf Empire lies in a barren wasteland east of the World's Edge Mountains, known as the Darklands. This vile realm is home to hundreds of tribes of goblinoids and other menacing monsters such as appalling magma trolls and horrifying ripper beasts. The Darklands is a wasteland devoid of natural plant life except for pitch-black thorns growing out of the cracks in the ground, inexplicably growing larger with each year, strangling any inquisitive animals that come too close, their spines digging into the animals' throats, their dark liquid dripping into the animal, infecting their body with the seed, allowing these dark plants to reproduce. Thick black clouds permanently hang over the sky, blotting out the sun, affording the land with no light, providing an eternal night from one stretch of mountains to another. This is not helped by the fumes constantly thrown out of the volcanoes that stretch the entirety of the Darklands. Ash plumes never dying, settling on the land, compress so much that not even the wind can move, staining this dread land in all shades of black and gray. Mountains of tuff exist around each and every volcano, most existing on top of one another, forming parasitic cones, having never ceased in their eruptions since the day they were formed, lava continuing to dribble out vents. The Chaos Dwarves rule an empire like no other. Unlike the merciless sadism of the Dark Elves or the insane barbarism of the followers of the Chaos Gods, the Chaos Dwarf slave empire functions like a giant carefully crafted machine. Within this dark empire, the Chaos Dwarves have grown accustomed to the hellish nightmare that is the Darklands. Excluding the area inhabited by the Zharr, known as the Plain of Zharr, this infernal land is split up into the three distinct but very similar areas: the Blasted Wastes, the Howling Wastes, and the Desolation of Azgorh. Each is the same desolate land as the rest of the Darklands, life appearing to have given up on trying, leaving this cracked and broken ground thousands of miles wide. The Tower of Zharr-Naggrund lies at the center of the Chaos Dwarf Empire, and is the object of all their labors and enterprise. Though there are numerous mines, workshops, foundries, and fortresses throughout the plain of Zharr-Naggrund and beyond, there is just one mighty city in all the empire, The tower of Zharr-Naggrund is built of obsidian black volcanic glass, whose light reflects the flames of the myriad furnaces that burn both day and night. The entire city is built in a series of tall steps like a ziggurat, each step hundreds of feet high and surmounted by battlements that jut upwards like a row of ugly fangs. Each step is square, and the bottom step is pierced by 4 huge stone gateways bound in iron. The gates are almost as high as the walls and massive beyond any obvious need. From the east and west gateways, roads paved with slabs of gold and brass led to the mountains of Morn and the Dark Lands. The north and south gateways are the river sluices through which the waters of the river Ruin pour. The cold river enters the city from the north, and it is put to use cooling the huge forges of the Chaos Dwarf sorcerers, powering the steam-driven engines and flushing the affluent of industry out to the south. Where it leaves the city, the river is stained red and yellow with filth, laden with noxious sediments, and its steaming water is thick and poisonous. A foul yellow cloud hangs about the river, and its banks are choked with drifts of spectacularly colored pollutants. At very few places can the river be safely crossed. This makes it an ideal natural defense against all the denizens who populate the mountains of Morn and the lands beyond. The great caravans from the east will usually use the Ivory Ford or the docks at Pigbata to cross the river. All other places are very dangerous and usually perilous. In the city of Zharr-Naggrund, the succeeding step of the ziggurat houses an ascending level of Chaos Dwarf society. The third and fourth highest steps are the sanctuary of the sorcerer prophets, open only to members of their harems and their most trusted servants. The lower levels house the bulk of the clan's population. The hobgoblin overseers also reside in the lower levels, but closer to the workshops, forges, and slave pens. This ensures that the hobgoblins can respond quickly to any trouble. It also places them between the slaves and their Chaos Dwarf masters in the event of a slave revolt. Huge doors guarded by massive bull centaurs bar entry to the uppermost tiers. A separate passageway with heavily guarded doors bypasses these tiers and leads to the very top of Zharr-Naggrund and the great temple of Hashut. The immense temple can accommodate the entire Chaos Dwarf population of Zharr-Naggrund. Guardian of the southeastern reaches of the Chaos Dwarf realm, the Black Fortress is a vast jagged citadel stained black by the volcanic fires of the rocky plateau on which it sits. Along with the Tower of Gorgoth, it vies for prominence and power as the second most important fortress citadel of the Chaos Dwarfs, beyond their heartland on the Zarduk Plain. But while the Tower of Gorgoth exists to stand watch over a slew of deep mines and caverns, the purpose of the Black Fortress is a purely military outpost, and is the headquarters for the Legion of Azgorh. The Legion is a mighty standing army which ranges from across the desolation of the southern Darklands, escorts the far-flung slave caravans through the howling wastes, and stands as a bulwark against the frequent invasions of ogres, orcs, and worse from the east. Even among their own kind, the purpose of the Black Fortress are renowned for their brutality and warriors' warlike great nature. And far removed as it is from Zharr-Naggrund and the favor of the great temple, it is often a place of an internal exile for those who have suffered in the savage politics of the Empire. The hellish caverns deep beneath the Black Fortress are also home to the Infernal Guard, a cult of disgraced warriors enslaved to the master of the Black Fortress, who must redeem themselves in the eyes of Hashut and the Zharr or die in the attempt. For many centuries, the Lord of the Black Fortress and commander of the Legion has been the sorcerer prophet Drazzoath the Ashen, bitter rival of Lord Astragoth, feared and respected in equal measure by the Chaos Dwarves bound to his service as a ruthless general and powerful wielder of Hashut's sacred fire. The Tower of Gorgoth rests atop a plateau in a small volcanic mountain range in the southern region of the Darklands. Deep within the remains of the long-extinct volcano Azgorh, the Zharr found there to be vast seams of precious minerals. Untold numbers of slaves have been brought here over the centuries, and the mines have developed into an extensive network. As the seams get deeper, they require increasing numbers of slaves to dig, and numerous slave trading clans have set up permanent residence within the Tower of Gorgoth itself. This area is filled with rich mining and serves as an important resource depot for the Chaos Dwarf Empire. Extracts of metallic minerals, coal, and other precious stones are required. Thousands of thralls toil in the excavation of the mines of Gorgoth, while diabolical demon smiths create their demonic forged weapons within the deeps of the heat-spewing volcanoes. All dwarves excel at the forging of weapons, architecture, and engineering, and are known to build the finest armor, constructs, and engines of war in the entire world. In the same way, the Chaos Dwarves construct their fortresses and weapons, but with the aid of the twisted arcane sciences and the sorcery of Hashut. The rich mines and forges of the Darklands provide the Chaos Dwarfs with all the wealth and resources they need to sustain their empire and produce great arsenals of destruction for their armies. The Chaos Dwarfs are uninterested in conquering more territory. The Darklands provide them with all that is necessary to maintain the glory of their empire. Even though their numbers have shown a slow but steady increase down the long centuries in which they have carved their empire from the Darklands, the Chaos Dwarves are still few, and are far outnumbered in their realm by those over who they claim dominion, by virtue of might and cruelty, their slaves. The Chaos Dwarfs consider all life other than that of their own kind to have value only as raw resource and fitting sacrifice, and to them the muscle and sinew, and even the souls of those that bow and scrape at gesture of their iron-shod hands, and cringe before the stroke of their steel-barbed whips, are no more than a commodity to be amassed, exploited, and spent. Without slaves of Zharr-Naggrund would not have been built, and its vast industries could not be maintained. And even now, the need for flesh and blood and labor only increases with each passing year, and the desolate empire always hungers for more. Hundreds of thousands of labor workers are needed to upkeep the massive armories and weapon foundries of the Chaos Dwarves, and hundreds of thousands more are needed for the excavations of mines. As a result, where other nations look to conquer simply to expand their territory, the Chaos Dwarfs wage wars of conquest solely for the acquisition of slaves. For without the expendable thralls to labor their industries, the Chaos Dwarf Empire would indeed expire. Chaos Dwarves are master craftsmen, and their armories produce an endless stream of armor and weapons, dark devices, and works of demon-fused occult engineering. Much of this war gear, the lesser products of their craft, blades and steel whose quality still outmatches any mere human craftsmanship, is traded northwards to the warring chaos-touched tribes and east to the ogre kingdoms in return for slaves, for which the Chaos Dwarves have an unending demand. Rare metals and gems, and to slake whatever strange desires the Sorcerer Prophet's experiments might require. By this trade, blood is spilled across the world by their weapons, and in doing so the Chaos Dwarves both enrich themselves and sow destruction in Hashut's name, and moreover, they spread their insidious influence further, gather intelligence in regards to their enemies, and so bring their dreams of dominion closer, one drop of shed blood at a time. The most potent warriors wear so-called black-shard armor, forged with hellfire and blood, stronger than mere steel and phenomenally resistant to the efforts of fire and heat. A significant number of troops are armed with firearms, from intricate wheel-lock pistols to the heavy, bladed fire-glaive repeating guns. But the hail-shot blunderbuss, a powerful short-range weapon whose murderous fire is amplified when used in ranked fusillade, is the most common and iconic. This last weapon was developed to combat the near-limitless orc and goblin hordes that abound in the lands around the Chaos Dwarf domain, and has become the terror of the greenskins in battle, able to blunt even their crushing charges and slaughter scores of howling goblins in a single thunderous blast from the warriors' ranks. It is for their war machines that the Chaos Dwarves have become most infamous and dreaded on the battlefield. Unfettered by the usual dwarf reliance on tradition and resistance to change, they have combined their intellect and sophisticated understanding of steam power and mechanism with the hellish lore of Hashut to produce a nightmarish array of weapons. These range from cannons that fire burning gouts of magma, to steam-driven reapers, to fortress-shattering mortars, and colossal siege engines of glittering brass. The most terrible of these war machines are bound with hungering demons, and their fabric granted them both an unholy semblance of life and unmatched killing power. The might and bloodlust of these hell-forged artifacts cannot be denied, and they are perilous even to their masters, should their occult bindings shake loose. As a result of their unpredictability and the difficulty of their construction, hell-bound war engines are used and fashioned more sparingly than more conventional, although no less deadly designs in the Chaos Dwarf arsenal. Such weapons are often tested in battle by a pact of alliance with the Chaos Warriors of the North, so long as it serves the Drothzar's purpose. And it is not uncommon to see small contingents of dreaded Chaos Dwarf war machines amid ranks of war bands and hordes of the Chaos Wastes, lending them their immense destructive power. Unlike other dwarves, the Chaos Dwarves are deeply learned in the sorcerer's arts, and have become obsessed with the control of hellish forces and the fires of the deep earth, combining the dark lore they have gleaned with an artisanship and skill for metalwork and industry undimmed from their ancient past. This has produced a bewildering variety of strange and infernal war engines. Demon-bound weapons and deadly tools of war, many of which they have long traded for resources and captives to the chaos-worshipping tribes of the northern wastes. But the greatest of their creations they have jealously guarded for themselves, and so decade after decade their power has grown. Deep within the dark lands, shielded by deadly mountain ranges and set amid desolation in the haunts of monstrous beasts, the empire of the Chaos Dwarves has faded into legend to many in the old world, but those famed to confront their implacable black iron-clad armies and savage engines know the truth. The day may yet come when the armies of dread Zharr-Naggrund march forth in force to crush the world beneath the wheels of industry.